Hi, my name is Margaret, and I'm 67 years old. On the night of my retirement party, surrounded by people who claimed to love me, I realized someone close to me wanted me gone. Forever. It wasn't just suspicion. I saw it in the way my daughter-in-law impressed one particular glass into my hand. Her smile too wide, her eyes too focused, as though she was waiting for me to take that single sip. That night should have been my celebration, the reward for decades of work. Instead, it became the moment I uncovered a plan to erase me from my own story, and the night that plan backfired in a way she never saw coming. Before I tell you how, my daughter-in-law's plan to drug me turned into the biggest mistake of her life. I want to ask you something. What would you do if a member of your own family plotted against you, believing you were too old and too weak to notice? Let me know in the comments, and also tell me which city and country you're watching from. I read every response and would love to thank you personally. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more true stories like this. I built my life from the ground up. For 40 years, I ran a small company that through persistence and sacrifice grew larger than anyone ever expected. Earlier that year, I sold it for $35 million. A number that still feels surreal when I say it out loud. People often think wealth makes life easier. They don't realize it can also turn loved ones into strangers. My retirement party was meant to be my grand farewell, a night of gratitude, laughter, and freedom after decades of responsibility. The ballroom sparkled with chandeliers, the tables were set with silver and crystal, and a live band filled the air with warm melodies. Old colleagues shook my hand with respect, friends embraced me with joy, and for a while I allowed myself to believe I was surrounded by nothing but love. But beneath the shine of the evening, I sensed an unease. My son, Michael, stood beside me, smiling, yet his eyes carried a shadow of worry. He had been struggling with money for years, though he rarely admitted it. Then there was Jessica, my daughter-in-law, gliding across the room as if she were the star of the night. In her glittering dress and diamond tennis bracelet, she greeted every guest with polished charm. People found her captivating, but I had always seen the ambition behind her sweetness. She was attentive, yes, but always calculating. She had made it clear, in words and in attitude, that she believed my fortune should belong to them sooner rather than later. That night, as I stood in the middle of the ballroom, smiling for photos and listening to toasts, I couldn't shake the feeling that Jessica's attention wasn't on celebrating me at all. It was on something else, something she thought I was too distracted or too old to notice. As the evening carried on, I noticed Jessica hovering near the drinks table with unusual attention. She poured champagne into tall flutes as if she were performing on stage, each gesture precise, each pour deliberate. Guests drifted by, picking up their glasses without a second thought, but there was one flute she never let out of her sight. It sat at the end of the row, a faint chip along its rim catching the glow of the chandeliers. Most people would never have noticed, but I've spent a lifetime spotting cracks in deals, in promises, in people. The smallest flaw always tells the biggest story. Jessica's smile never faltered as she drifted through the crowd, but her eyes kept sliding back to that one glass, as though it was reserved for someone special. When the moment came, she approached me with a sweetness too, polished to be genuine. "For you, Mom," she said warmly, pressing the flute into my hand. "Only the best for the woman who made this night possible." Her tone was syrupy, but her gaze was sharp, locked on my every move. I held the glass delicately, masking the unease that stirred inside me. On the surface, I was the picture of gratitude, but beneath it, every instinct screamed, this was no act of kindness. This was a stage set for something darker. The music swelled, glasses clinked, and the crowd buzzed with laughter. Jessica lingered close, her eyes fixed on me as though my first sip was the grand finale she had been waiting for. I raised the flute, my expression calm, my smile steady. "Such a beautiful evening," I said lightly. my voice carrying just enough ease to disguise the storm beneath. She tilted her head, her lips curving with satisfaction, and then, in the smallest movement, hidden by the swirl of guests, I made my move. As she turned to greet a passing friend, I set the chipped glass back among the others and replaced it with a fresh flute. Smooth, flawless, untouched. My heart thudded once, sharp and strong, but my hand remained steady. I lifted the new glass, tapped it gently against a colleague's, and took a careful sip. The crisp champagne fizzed against my tongue, and Jessica turned back just in time to see me drinking. Her smile widened, triumphant, unaware that the trap she had laid had already closed around her. In that instant, the roles shifted. She believed she had cornered me, but I knew better. I wasn't her prey. I was the hunter, patient and watchful, letting her walk into her own downfall. For a brief while, everything returned to normal. Speeches were made, laughter rose and fell, and the band played a bright, cheerful tune. But then I saw it, the slight tremor in Jessica's hand as she lifted her glass. Her face paled, a shadow creeping across her skin, draining the color from her cheeks. She pressed her lips together, trying to mask the unease, but her body betrayed her. The flute slipped from her hand and shattered on the polished floor. The sharp crack silenced the music, the conversations, the laughter. Gasps erupted, chairs scraped back, and suddenly all eyes were on Jessica as she staggered, clutching the edge of the table. "Jessica!" Michael shouted, his voice raw with panic as he lunged forward to catch her. She crumpled in his arms, her head lolling, her breath shallow. Someone screamed to call an ambulance. The band fell silent, and chaos swallowed the room. Stood among the crowd, my expression composed, my glass steady in my hand. To everyone else I appeared stunned, another helpless witness to a sudden medical emergency. But inside I was calm, steady, almost cold. I knew this wasn't fate, it wasn't illness, it was consequence. The glass she had prepared for me had found its way back to her, and now she was the one paying the price. As the sirens wailed in the distance, drawing closer with every second, one thought echoed in my mind. Her plan had already begun to backfire. And this was only the beginning. The ambulance ride felt tense, though I wasn't the one fighting for air. Jessica lay strapped to the stretcher, pale and trembling, as the paramedics worked over her with practiced urgency. Michael clung to her, hand whispering frantic words, his face contorted with fear. I sat quietly in the corner, hands folded in my lap, calm in a way that must have looked heartless to anyone else. But I wasn't heartless. I was watchful. At St. Mary's Hospital, nurses wheeled Jessica into the emergency room. The attending physician barked orders. Possible toxic ingestion, prep for tests. The phrase confirmed what I already knew, though no one looked at me as they said it. I watched as Michael paced the waiting area, running a hand through his hair, muttering half-formed prayers. When he finally sat beside me, his voice was soft, but his words were carefully chosen. "Mom, this is serious. You've been under too much stress. Maybe it's time we take some responsibility off your shoulders. A care facility, or at least let us handle the paperwork. You shouldn't be worrying about all that anymore." His eyes glistened as if with compassion, but there was something else beneath the surface, something sharper. Later that night, while Jessica was sedated and monitored, I stepped out into the hallway. Voices drifted from around the corner, Michael's voice low and urgent, speaking on the phone. "No, we're close. She'll sign. Once the papers are in place, the debts are covered. Just hold them off a little longer." My breath slowed, though my pulse raced. The words hit me harder than the sound of Jessica collapsing on that ballroom floor. It wasn't just Jessica's scheme. Michael, my son, my only child, was part of it. His desperation had twisted into betrayal. And standing there in that sterile hallway, I felt something inside me harden. They thought age made me fragile. They were about to learn age had only made me sharper. The next morning, Jessica remained in her hospital bed, pale but alive. Michael sat beside her, clutching her hand as if the gesture could erase his guilt. I left them to their act. My mind was already 2 steps ahead. From the privacy of my study, I called David, my lawyer of more than 20 years. He had seen me through contracts, boardroom battles, and mergers that others swore I couldn't win. "It's worse than I imagined," I told him, recounting the events of the party and what I had overheard in the hospital hallway. David listened in silence before speaking. "We'll need evidence, not just instinct. Are you prepared for that?" My answer was steady. "I've been preparing my whole life." That's when Patricia entered the story. A private investigator David trusted. She was discreet, sharp-eyed, and relentless. Within days, she uncovered the truth I suspected but hadn't yet seen in black and white. Jessica's credit card records showed expensive dinners and unexplained purchases far beyond their means. Bank statements revealed transfers to men with reputations darker than night. And then came the chilling discovery: an application for a life insurance policy with my name as the insured and Jessica as the beneficiary. The ink on it was barely dry. Patricia slid the file across my desk, her gaze firm. "They're not just desperate, they're dangerous. This wasn't an accident, it was a plan." I traced a hand over the papers, calm on the outside, though every line of evidence burned in my chest. My own son, entangled in debts, and his wife, ready to poison me for profit. They thought they could scare me into surrender. They thought my age was a weakness. What they didn't know was that time had taught me patience, and patience can be sharper than any blade. I wasn't going to fight them with anger. I was going to fight them with precision. Jessica returned from the hospital with a frailty that looked convincing to everyone except me. She moved slowly, spoke softly, and wrapped herself in an aura of vulnerability, as though she were the one who needed protection. But the sharpness in her eyes never dulled. One evening, she sat across from me in my living room, her hand resting delicately on Michael's arm. "Mom," she began, her voice tender but rehearsed, "you've been through so much, all the stress, all the responsibilities. It's not safe for you anymore. Let us help. Just sign these papers so we can take care of everything for you." Michael leaned forward eagerly, his words tumbling out in support. "It's just a power of attorney, Mom. Nothing permanent, just until things are more settled." Their tone was gentle, but I heard the urgency beneath it, the desperation of gamblers running out of time. They thought I was hesitating, weighing the choice. In truth, I had already prepared my counterstroke. With David's help, I had drawn up a new set of documents, papers that mirrored what Jessica and Michael expected, but carried one crucial twist. Every cent of my estate, every asset, every property was secured in an irrevocable trust under my granddaughter's name. No loophole, no trick, no desperate plea could undo it. I let my shoulders sag, allowed a weary sigh to escape my lips, and gave a small nod. "You're right. Maybe it's time I let someone else carry the burden." Relief flashed across Jessica's face, a glint of triumph sparking in her eyes. She believed she had won, but she hadn't realized that every step she had taken had led her straight into the trap I had laid with patience and precision. The day of the signing arrived. My living room was arranged neatly, the coffee table polished, the curtains drawn, back to let the afternoon light spill across the room. Jessica and Michael entered with confidence radiating from every gesture. Jessica wore her best smile and carried a sleek folder, her nails tapping lightly against it in anticipation. Michael hovered at her side, nervous but eager, his eyes darting between me and the papers, as though the future of his entire life balanced on my signature. "This will only take a moment," Jessica said sweetly, sliding the folder across the table. I sat calmly, pen in hand, my face unreadable. They leaned in, barely breathing, their excitement palpable. What they couldn't see was that David, my lawyer, and Detective Morrison from the local police department were waiting quietly in the next room, ready to step in when the moment came. I picked up the pen, scrawled my name on the first page, then paused. "Before we continue," I said, my tone even, but carrying the weight of command, "I think there's something you should explain." With deliberate care, I pulled another folder from my side and laid it on the table. Jessica frowned, confusion flickering across her face. Then she flipped it open. Inside were the toxicology results from the hospital. Proof of a toxic substance found in her bloodstream, the same one identified on the chipped champagne glass I had turned over to the police. Next came copies of her bank transfers, linking her directly to lenders who had been hounding Michael, and finally the insurance application, cold, undeniable, with her name as my beneficiary. Jessica's face drained of color. "This isn't what it looks like," she whispered, her voice breaking. Michael's hands shook as he reached for the papers, but I slid them out of his grasp. "It's exactly what it looks like," I said firmly, just as the sharp knock at the door echoed through the room. David entered with Detective Morrison at his side, both calm, precise, unshaken. Jessica stammered, "You can't prove—" But her words faltered under the detective's steady gaze. The room fell silent, the only sound the pounding of Michael's heart as his perfect scheme unraveled before his eyes. The predators who thought they had trapped me now sat cornered, exposed, and powerless. Jessica's face hardened as she realized the weight of the evidence laid before her. Still, she tried to recover, her voice trembling but defiant. "You have no idea what you're doing. Those papers, you're overreacting. We were only trying to protect you." Her eyes flicked to Michael, urging him to speak. Michael stepped forward, desperation twisting his expression. "Mom, please, we were never going to hurt you. We just wanted to make sure everything was safe. The stress, it isn't good for you." I studied him for a long moment, the son I once cradled, now reduced to a liar clutching at excuses. Then, with deliberate calm, I reached for another folder resting on the table. "If safety was really what you cared about, then perhaps you should read what I already signed." I slid the papers toward them, my gaze steady, unflinching. Jessica snatched the document, scanning it eagerly, but the confidence drained from her eyes as the words sank in. $1? She whispered, her voice breaking into disbelief. "Yes," I said evenly. "Every cent of my estate has already been placed into a secure trust. Emma will inherit it all when she comes of age. As for you, you receive $1 single. That is the value I place on your loyalty, Jessica. That is the price of betrayal." Her lips parted as though she might argue, but no sound came. Michael's shoulders sagged, his face pale, the fight bleeding out of him. The victory they thought was within their grasp crumbled into dust, replaced by a single worthless coin. The silence in the room was heavy, broken only when Detective Morrison spoke. Firmly, "This conversation is over. Jessica, Michael, you'll both need to come with me." In that moment, the empire of lies they had built collapsed completely, and the trap they set for me had closed around them instead. The days that followed moved swiftly, each one bringing consequences Jessica and Michael had hoped to avoid. Jessica was arrested on charges of attempted fraud and reckless endangerment. Her polished social mask shattered the moment her mugshot appeared in the local news. Neighbors whispered, friends recoiled, and the charm she wielded so effortlessly evaporated overnight. Michael was not handcuffed beside her, but the damage to him was just as brutal. His debts came to light, his reputation in ruins. Business partners pulled away, creditors circled, and every attempt to explain his way out only painted him as weak, complicit, and desperate. He was left standing in the wreckage of the life he had chosen, not by accident, but by betrayal. I didn't attend the hearings. I didn't need to. The outcome was never in doubt. Instead, I stayed in my garden, sipping tea while the sun warmed my face. Friends called, shocked at the scandal, some offering sympathy, others admiration. I listened politely, but inside my emotions were steady. I'd already grieved the loss of the son I once knew, the boy who ran into my arms for comfort after scraped knees and childhood nightmares. That boy was gone. The man left in his place had made his choice. When David visited one afternoon, he asked if I regretted it. I looked out over the roses, their petals unfolding in the sunlight, and shook my head. I gave him life, I said quietly, but I couldn't give him character. Jessica faced her sentence, Michael faced his. Downfall and I, despite everything, remained standing, my dignity intact, my legacy preserved. And when my granddaughter Emma came to visit, her laughter filled the house with light. It was in her voice, in her joy, that I found the reassurance I needed. The future belonged to her, not to those who tried to steal it. The predators had fallen, and the prey they thought they cornered walked away stronger than ever. Months passed, and the storm that once raged around my retirement party finally began to fade into whispers. The newspapers had moved on, the neighbors found new gossip, and the world carried forward as it always does. But within the walls of my home, peace returned. My garden bloomed again, each rose opening, as if to remind me that even after the harshest winters, beauty finds its way back. Every morning I walked the garden path with Emma, my granddaughter, her small hand curled trustingly around mine. She asked questions about the flowers, about life, about the future, and in her bright, untainted eyes, I found the reason I had fought so fiercely to protect what was mine. My wealth wasn't just numbers on paper, it was security for her, a shield against the greed and recklessness of those who had forgotten what love should mean. Sometimes, when the light slanted through the roses just right, I thought of Jessica's cold smile and Michael's desperate eyes. I thought of the night they tried to make me weak and how their plan unraveled with every step. They believed age was fragility. They believed I was blind. What they didn't understand was that age sharpens vision. Age turns survival into instinct. I'm not bitter. I am resolute. I am living proof that betrayal doesn't have to break you, it can strengthen you. And now, with my legacy preserved and Emma's laughter echoing through the halls of my home, I know I've already won. So let me leave you with this question. If you were in my place, would you have fought back the same way, or would you have walked away? Share your answer in the comments and tell me which city and country you're watching from. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss more true stories of betrayal, survival, and unexpected justice. Because sometimes the truth isn't just stranger than fiction, it's sharper.